Hey, hi everybody. We are here to discuss Bill C-29 or Bill C-9, um, and why I think it's targeting the cross and why it's a very worrisome provision. And we have a member from Kitchener who I know through Action from Canada, Lisa, who's over here. We have two other lawyers other than myself, Colin Brown and Tim, and either of you can give your background if you feel like it before we start. And Lisa, you can give your background as well before we start the presentation. Colin, did you want to tell people
Sure.
about yourself?
Sure, since I have most recently done so, it's fresh in my memory. So I'm a 66-year-old black Nova Scotian practicing criminal law in Ontario. At around 2020 or 2019, I think, I became aware of the Proud Boys organization, so I looked into it. I joined the organization. I was a member for about 2 years when the Liberal government of Trudeau, etc., put on. I had a Jagmeet Singh's suggestion with Andrew Scheer climbing on board, put the group on the terrorist list. At which point I went on record reaffirming my vows as a Proud Boy, which basically is just somebody who says, "Yes, I believe in what the Western model of civilization." At any rate, um, I was investigated by the Law Society after the Anti-Hate Network, of course, made a complaint. They basically weren't able to find that I was a very good white supremacist, considering I'm black, and as a criminal lawyer who does some constitutional work as a result, looking at various bills, especially the freedom of speech bills, become and the obviously the terrorism bills become of personal interest to me. So there you go.
I'll give you a little background. I wrote World on Mute by Lisa Merrill, and I'm a lawyer of 26 years. My last contract I stopped practicing was about 2024, and I've been devoting myself to my writing and activism. I have a section in the book that looks at the targeting of Christians and in terms of that their speech is considered hate speech, both in terms of biblical gender views and LGBT and other mechanisms. The problem I see is that this is a phenomenon that's coming out in the UK, it's coming out in Canada, it's coming out in Europe and in Germany. And in Finland, there's an MP who put up on her own page quote Bible quotes, and she was charged criminally with hate speech. She was found guilty at the lower court. It was overturned at the Court of Appeal, but the Crown has now it's on its way all the way to the Supreme Court in Finland. And so, what I want people to think about is that the view of Christianity has morphed in somewhat of an attack format. And so that'll be part of our presentation. Tim, do you want to tell people about yourself or?
Sure. Yeah, I've been practicing for over 30 years, born and raised in Waterloo. I have a bit of background. Well, I've been corporate, commercial, and real estate mostly, and I have done some criminal law. I articled at the Crown's office, so I have some knowledge of the criminal code. I haven't been in that involved with it recently, but I have a knowledge of it, and I can read it and understand it. So I can contribute where needed, and I agree with Lisa that this is becoming more and more of a problem, the corrupt government and how that's manifesting. So C-9 is another example. I haven't read it all myself yet, haven't digested it, but I know mainly from you that it's an issue, and I've been trying to get caught up on it, but it's just more of the same, and this seems to be getting more and more pervasive.
Lisa, do you want to say hi?
Um, I will just say hello. I'm coming as a concerned citizen. I work in the education field as an ECE, and over time, I've been quite concerned about what's going on with the government. And since COVID, I have really been reading more, and I just want to show my concern and, make sure that what's going on in government is for the people. And I have found that more and more it is coming from outside sources, and that makes me extremely concerned.
Okay, so everybody, I'm going to share my screen now, and I thank everybody for coming who's here watching us now, for Lisa, Colin, and Tim. Do you see my screen? Did I manage to share it?
Yes, you did.
I did? All right, sure. Let's see. I'm going to minimize this or maximize it. So what we're talking about today is a bill that is known as Bill C-9, and it's an act to amend the criminal code. Okay, so it's very serious because criminal code often comes with the types of restraints against liberty that are not found in other legislation. So um, it purports to help protect the access to religious and cultural spaces. But I'm going to take you through my argument and my reasoning and the political environment that we're in that leads me to lean in on these provisions. So it's it's basically a hate symbol bill. Okay, so the willful promotion of hate. And so I want you to think, okay, do we have a huge hate symbol issue broadly? What symbols are in your environment other than the WEF, Chrome, and whatever, 666 symbols all over the place? But what hate symbols are you aware of? And so you're going to see that although everybody's sort of talking about the low threshold of hate, I really want to, no one's really talking about what this bill does and where it's really going. So there's three symbols. There's three symbols that they're going after. One, a symbol that is used or principally associated with a listed entity as defined in subsection 8301. So we'll see all those entities and we'll look and decide, are they recognized symbols that you're aware of that are all over the world, our world right now, and that we should be afraid of? Two, the Nazi swastika. Okay. And then three, something that resembles A or B. So this is either a massive bill centered on the symbol, the hate symbol, the Nazi symbol, okay? And I don't really see it anywhere. I don't know anyone who uses it, and I don't really see it. And then this listed entity. So it lists a reference 8301. So let's get over and take a look at 8301. So 8301 is here, okay? And these are an entity is a person, group, trust, partnership, or funded unincorporated association or organization. A listed entity is an entity established by the governor and council under 8305. So then the governor and council, I'll have you know, because I looked that up, and the governor and council is made up of the Privy Council, whose oath is to the king, right, and who's appointed by our prime minister, and the governor general, also whose oath is to the king and not our constitution. Okay, so then I decided, well, who are the listed entities currently? Because you got to remember, this thing goes after symbols. So then the swastika is a bad symbol, and then the symbols of these listed entities. So this is such an important bill to outlaw these symbols. Here's the listed entities. And I can tell you, I know none of their symbols. So you can see here, there's a lot of Muslim or Islamist groups. There's what I would say are white nationalist groups. They may or may not be Christian. They may or may not be infiltrated by the government because the anti-hate group is funding is a dialectic for a purpose. the Indian Mujahideen. So if you could tell me if you know any of these Islamic State symbols, here's the Proud Boys, the Taliban. That's the entire list of symbols of groups. So we're going after their symbols. We're going to outlaw their symbols so they can't be around. And I've got to tell you that since really I know none of their symbols, I don't think that this is a good purpose for the bill. So, but at any point in time, a group could become a listed entity. And so now more broadly, I want to take you through some other matters that show my concern. Here we have Honorable Francois-Philippe Champagne. And few people know this, but in 2024, MP Giovanni of the Conservative Party made an official party question of how many churches had actually burned in Canada. He put that into Parliament, and what happens is it's a process that the Liberal Party then has to set down an official response, okay? And it was entered into Parliament. I have the links here, and I'll put them in the show notes. So there was the official party question, and it turns out, here's the order paper question, set down December 13th, December 2024, okay? And then who responds to that order paper question is the Honorable Francois-Philippe Champagne. He signs this. And he enters in December of 2024 the amount of churches that have burned in Canada. These are the Liberals' numbers. These are the Liberals' numbers. I will repeat that again. These are the Liberals' official numbers entered into Parliament. 2016, 35 churches. 17, 38 churches. 2018, 42 churches. 2019, 52 churches. 2020, 58 churches. 2028, 90 churches. 2022, 74 churches. 2023, 74 churches. So what I want you to see politically is that that would qualify as a hate crime. And not only that, but the Liberal Party, instead of actually investigating this as a hate crime, they were completely silent. And just 3 weeks ago, an MP in Hamilton, I'm forgetting his name, but he indicated that it's a right-wing conspiracy theory that churches are burning in Canada. So in Parliament, he gaslights Canadians that there's no issues with respect to churches burning. Those are the numbers since 2023, 463. Since then, how many churches have been burning? It's ever increasing. So it is not the case that hate crimes aren't taking place. This man knows that 463 churches have burned. This man has not done any investigation into the churches that are burning. None of the Liberals have done any investigation into the churches of burning. So should Christians fear a government that has an opinion of a religious entity or a religious practice that they think should their places of worship should burn without reprisal? It's one thing to have religious versus religious difficulties, and that throughout society and history you've had. But it's another thing entirely when a government has an opinion on religion and is targeting one religion. So the failure to investigate it as a hate crime. So we have hate legislation that would apply. The failure, the official failure with knowledge is dangerous. When a government targets a religious entity, it's dangerous. So I wanted to go further and note that in May of 2023, King Charles quietly stopped being defender of the faith. So that's an official position that he used to be defender of Christianity. So he's decided, only in Canada, to my knowledge, that he will not be defender of the faith. So I find that worrisome. Now, you may also note that when Sean Fute went across Canada, he was described as a hate speaker, and universally in all the provinces, he had obtained permits to do worship music, glory be to God. And he was canceled by governments because he was described as a hate speaker. Rebel News has recently covered that the Antifa protester included a member of the Canadian Army. So there was, he ended up going into a church, a smoke bomb was thrown, and Rebel News tracked it to a member of the government. So here we have the further idea, which is explored in my book, that quoting the Bible itself or being biblical is hate speech. So all the provinces were canceled. So I have a realistic fear that the symbol, right? This is a symbol. Commits offense displaying a symbol, a terrorism and a hate symbol. Sean was interviewed by none other than John Tory on, I think it was 1010 News. I listened to it, and he was challenged by John Tory as being a hate speaker for criticisms of the LGBTQ rainbow. And Sean's response is, I don't think I've ever talked about them. I just come to worship. So you see that how low the threshold for hate can be. He was described as anti-woman because he was pro-life. And so I'm pro-life. Am I anti-women? I'd say everybody here exists because they were given that opportunity to life. However, that's my view. And so I worry that the hate symbol, and I think it's a realistic idea that the hate symbol might be the cross. And I wanted to open it up I'm going to stop sharing, and then we'll go back into the provisions and what it could do and why else I'm concerned. But I want to open it up to everybody else. Colin, did you want to
Sure.
weigh in here?
Yeah, there's a couple of sort of very obvious problems. Actually, there's nothing but very obvious problems. There's actually nothing left once you look at the very obvious problem. You start off, I guess, with the first item on the list of symbols that they're worried about being symbols nobody knows.
Right.
The only reason I know the Proud Boy symbol is because I'm a Proud Boy, and nobody else knows that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so first off, you can't have a major societal problem nobody is affected by.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that makes no sense whatsoever. What is a symbol? Some of these symbols, they could use the Valentine heart as a symbol, so that makes anybody now who's got a Valentine card also a terrorist. I mean, the whole thing makes no sense just from jump there. The swastika is the swastika existed as a symbol way before the Nazis grabbed it, right? So the bottom line is it's now a current symbol, that symbol plus the reverse of it in cultures across the globe from day one. So it's a fucking stupid idea. And this resembles crap is even it's so idiotic. It's stupider than them coming after me as a white supremacist. The word resembles is ridiculously broad. And how do you determine to what degree of resemblance you need to have got in order to be in trouble? The whole thing, I wish I could seriously think somebody's a practical joker and this is a joke, and they're just it's April Fools, and we're all gonna show up and go, ah, they go, yeah, we were just kidding, but it's not a joke. We know that the in Canada, this hate crimes crap is basically a cudgel being used for whatever government's in power to beat the crap out of whoever they want to. And we need people to look at it and redraft this crap if it should be drafted at all. So it's crap from jump. That's my position.
And do you have a secondary concern like I do that that order in council could at a later date um, go after the cross?
It could go after anything. That's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing it couldn't go after. So yes, the idea that it would target the Christian cross is definitely, I would say, in the top 5 things they're going after, if not number 1. So I'm with you. It's just it's so ridiculous and such a casting a net that the word wide doesn't even describe what this net is. So yes, it could, anything they don't like, bang, they'll be able to go after it with this stupidity.
Tim, and having gone through the presentation on the fact that there's only the swastika and symbols that we don't know, do you think my concern that they could be gunning for the cross is in the realm of possibility?
Well, yes, we're already seeing it in the UK, I believe. I've been following that a bit, and I'm with Colin, obviously. Just another vehicle for censorship and oppression, which is beyond the pale and beyond belief. I mean, you go back 10 years, if you had told me this was happening or would happen, I wouldn't believe it. So another example of how we're living in the matrix, like, how is this even possible? That's where I stand on it.
Another thing to note is the budget item has that change to the charitable status to take religious purpose out of charitable status. And I did an extensive Substack on it because you can get charitable status for another category that was introduced called other. And the LGBTQ churches who, have different views on the gospel than what it's written, actually qualify under other. And why that's important is that then you're going to have traditional churches with traditional viewpoints eliminated and punished under the loss of the charitable status, and more, and let's say you are LGB, want to go find Christ, and you think you're going to find it in that church. Go ahead. I mean, it's a big world and everybody's allowed to have a lot of different ideas. But this is going to punitively affect those who are traditional. And that might include people, whether they're Catholic, Orthodox, or Protestants. So that we have a government that's attacking the religious purpose charity at the same time they're bringing in this legislation means that I think we have to look at the writing on the wall, and whether or not it's illegal to pray outside an abortion clinic silently in the UK. Silent prayer, people are being arrested for. And so that's like literally what they think is in your head is something you cannot have. And yeah, it's like the absolute thought police. Lisa, do you also have a concern that they might target Christianity in terms of this bill?
Oh, I think they would do that. Another thing that I've been thinking about is if you use a hate speech bill that is very ambiguous, it is having people arguing with each other, and while the government is putting in legislation that will affect everyone. Everybody's fighting over small things and not looking at a bigger picture.
That's really good.
Just the whole fighting thing. I mean, that's their goal, to keep us against each other and oppressed. And when we're fighting with each other, we're not fighting the government. And then they keep rolling. So that's all part of the process.
I think that's a really, really good point. We're put into boxes, and those boxes get more and more defined about who our enemies are, and so we're missing the picture. I'm going to share again because I want to take you through. Did I succeed to share?
Yeah.
You
Okay,
did. Yep.
I want to take you through something else, which is what is the forfeiture clause and the defense, okay? So you're not going to be convicted apparently if it's for a legitimate purpose. Okay. So they get to decide if the display of the symbol was for a legitimate purpose. And so what's a legitimate purpose? They get to define, including related to journalism, religion. But you could display it for religion that is not a legitimate purpose, right? So if they fit this symbol, the cross, as something illegitimate. Now remember, 463 churches have burned. What's the legitimate purpose of allowing that hate not to be investigated, right? And finding that the government is associated with uh, throwing the Canadian military is associated with throwing a smoke bomb on a Christian service. What are we to take of that? We have to take the writing on the wall for what it actually is. It's, frightening. And they'll just roll through. And this can be used as just the dissent to go after the dissent. So here's the clause that I'm worried about. So if a person is convicted of an offense under 1, 2, 21, 2, 2, or Section 318, anything by means of or relation to which the offense was committed, on such conviction may, in addition to other punishment imposed, be ordered by the presiding provincial court judge or judge to be forfeited to His Majesty in right of province in which that person is convicted for disposal as the Attorney General may direct. So there's maybe 3 possible interpretations of this, none of which are good. Okay? So it could be unlimited property disposal, okay, forfeited to His Majesty, right? I decided to read a lot of property forfeiture, property, items used in the commission of crime that ends up being forfeited, and none of the clauses are written in this confusing way. So the first thing is that anything really that they deem was in relation to the offense. So what could be in relation to your offense? Your house, because you were comfortable when you posted that you believed in Jesus? Is it your relationship with your children? Is your bank account? Is it your car? Is it your cell phone? This is an unlimited amount of property forfeiture because it's anything by means of or in relation to, and in addition to any other punishment imposed. So that's the first problematic, and this is where I'm not seeing the lawyers currently speaking about this, breaking it down. So that's an unlimited forfeiture clause, right? For what we're saying is a unknown symbols or the swastika, which I don't know is really going on. Okay. It could be the kafifa, who know, they could be going after that as well. Who knows? But then, okay, if you go and say that a person, anything by means of or relation to which the offense was committed, and you say that the personality, the person, and the life of that person is the means that the offense was committed by, it turns into a capital punishment clause. And so I've recently got a ruling that the shots are bioweapons. And so they've been unleashed on humanity without redress by the Canadian government. We have fentanyl free on our streets, and we have a huge fentanyl problem, and we fund safe injection. We have what I almost would like to call asterisks, because I don't want to minimize the Holocaust, but is almost like genocidal policies by governments. And so, should we mistrust this clause? And then the last thing, when I usually look at a clause, I go, a person, let's go a bunch of qualifiers, may, in another qualifier, be ordered by the presiding provincial court judge or judge to be forfeited to His Majesty in right of the province in which that person is convicted for disposal as the Attorney General may direct. So I have two interpretations in the forfeiture clause that involves a possible capital punishment availability. And you can say it's either worded purposefully or accidentally, obtusely to involve that. And I find if you're nudged, oh, this is it's the cell phone, or it's the actual cross, or it's the kafifa, it's the actual thing. They're taking the thing. I don't think they're taking the thing. I think they're taking anything, everything, and including your life. And that's how I read it. And if they want to limit that reading and come up with a different reading, they ought to. And I'm just going to stop share and allow you guys to weigh in. And I know that's a hard interpretation. And Colin, did you want to, you do criminal law. I do a lot of contract law. I've done, working in the auto sector. And my job always was to rein in the interpretations of any clause. And I was exceptionally good at just, if this is what you mean, then put it clearly. Otherwise, I have to insure all kinds of scenarios with insurance, etc. And that adds to the cost of the contract or what have you. Or if you have insurance for these possible items already, why do we duplicate the cost? Let's make it a more cost-effective contract. So whether I'm looking at statute or contract, I try to minimize the possible interpretations. Those were my three worrisome interpretations.
Well, I articled in insurance defense, so I know what you're talking about. And the short answer is that you're perfectly correct. The criminal law in Canada is drafted as if the idea of having the discretion in the hands of the Crown attorneys and the police makes some sense. So they say, like the definition of assault or definition of extortion, they're drafted very, very broadly, and they assume that the police officer and the Crown attorney would never proceed with stupid cases. But the courts are backed up with purely stupid cases, not just stupid cases, but they're backed up with purely stupid cases. When you look at this baloney you've just shown me, it's worse than the first panel. The idea, and from anybody working with contracts will recognize this idea, that you have a completely foolish subjective phrase like legitimate purpose, that you multiply with the word anything, means that for a purpose that whoever the judge happens to be decides is legitimate or not, anything that you have connected to this so-called symbol could wind you in hot water. So let me give you a real life example for those who have difficulty with abstraction. The public doesn't, but you now know that the Proud Boy symbol is a rooster. So let's say that I'm wearing a T-shirt with a rooster. Well, I'm going to jail, and perhaps they decide that my body should be forfeit, or at least my chest, because that's used to display the rooster, right? All of this is perfectly within the drafting of the stupidity that I'm looking at. So therefore, I think that the idea of my carrying on my life without my chest probably would come pretty close to capital punishment. So this drafting, you would have to conclude
Mhm.
that the people behind the drafting that you've shown us so far are either joking or they're terrorists, because the idea is to terrify anybody subject to this stupidity. So that's my position.
Yeah, yeah, there's a sure it might be what I would say, oh, well, that is a maybe it's a small risk that it's interpreted that way. Maybe it's, maybe it's a small risk, but then you have to look at the political climate against Christians and the political climate of what we're seeing as really outrageous uh, offenses against our personal inalienable rights, right? Against speech, and certainly a symbol that they should have the balls to say what they're doing here, in my view, because what this like I think we should come out really just saying the government possibly is going to go after Christianity and the cross with Bill C-9, and the government has written an obtuse clause that can have the possible interpretation of capital punishment as part of the punishment. And people might say, well, that's a really, it's a really broad, weird interpretation of that language. Actually, the language itself is really weird and isn't the typical forfeiture of property clause. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anybody that has been involved with the law and knows the law realizes that legislation that's written that is unduly broad, it can be struck down for various reasons, for vagueness and just misallocation or misinterpretation, call it what you will, but that's what the charter is for, and other means to strike down unduly broad legislation that is subject to that type of interpretation. In this case, it's probably done on purpose. Most legislation is not written that way because they don't want it struck down.
Right,
And
right.
in this
That's a good point.
case, right,
Hmm.
they don't care, or they want it broad, as Colin mentioned, primarily on the front end at the outset to act as a severe deterrent, to start with that, and then we'll see where it goes from there in terms of prosecution and enforcement.
Yeah, so it looks like something that could target Christians, could be used to target consent, or sorry, dissent. It could take property rights broadly, and at its worst interpretation could be a capital punishments clause. So it's absolutely absurd that it's written that way, and but then put it in the light of the 463 churches that they've ignored. And I think Christians should be rising up to challenge this and to say point blank, look, we're calling this the beheading Christian bill or something. We're going to call you out on it. This is so vile. We know you're coming for the cross, and we know that your forfeiture provision has unlimited possibilities of tyranny within it. So, Lisa, do you, having seen now the presentation, see the possible concerns that we have in it? We don't hear you.
Yes, I do. I I don't have a law background, but from how I understood something which sounded very strange, that they can give some of the decision making to the Governor General and the Privy Council, which seems very strange to me when that a crime should be dealt with in a court of law, not with decision making from the king.
That's interesting. That's another perspective, and I like it. It means, yeah, that at the Privy Council, um, the new listed entity, which might be the cross, it could be taken a pure political, it could be a pure political move. So this could be a very political bill, and I think that's a really, really good comment, Lisa. Does anybody have a strategy? Because this has already had its second reading in the House. And I I think I think this is a dangerous bill, and I think we should. This is a let's get loud bill, and I think we should actually let's get loud uh, as Christians as well, and possibly other faith groups who might see themselves someday at the other end of the stick with the government, because usually communist type governments end up running through all the religions and have have contempt for anybody worshiping anything but the communist entity. I really do think we're looking at a government that is putting more and more power in the state, more and more employment in the state. Most people that are paying taxes outside of state employment are possibly grifters getting grift from the state. And so we have a situation where the dependents, the UBI, all of that is looking more and more like a Stalin-esque Mayo type government. And they never have ever in history liked religion. Um, do you have any ideas on strategy, brainstorming, and anybody can put their speak first?
Okay,
Caller?
so Lisa, I had sent earlier and I looked it up. It's available. There have been some council in Canada already who have jumped on this bandwagon. I thank you for having brought it to my attention. I intend to talk to some people who have been more involved in political strategy like this. In terms, I've been practicing a lot and shooting my mouth off, but in terms of actually knowing how to go after proposed legislation, there are people who are far more experienced. So there's a list that I sent on. It's easy to find. I have a good buddy who does this. Maybe is it Tim, the other gentleman?
Yes.
Okay, maybe Tim has some information. Maybe you do, but I would say reach out to those who do know what to do, unless somebody on this call does.
So, Tim, what are your thoughts on what a possible strategy is? And I like that we have Colin with some follow up that he's going to do. Lisa, you're involved with the Action for Canada. Could you get it this discussion to Action for Canada? We can't hear you.
Sorry, absolutely, yes. I definitely can get this out there to Action for Canada.
Okay. And then perhaps we should try to get it to bishops, archbishops in the Catholic Church, Orthodox Church, and how, I mean, Protestant churches are not so similarly hierarchy so that you can't go right up at the top, but somehow we should have sort of and she told two friends mechanism where perhaps we ask people to take this video or a QR code or information to a congregation, and once they learn about it, they have to take it to the next congregation. So Lutherans take it to Baptists, take it to Catholics, take it to, one of the things is that we are, have different sub beliefs within Christianity. but I think will be universally targeted, and so should bring us together. And in that movement, that could be a way to do it as well, because
I
we
was
need a
just
lot
going
of
to say
noise. Yeah.
something interesting. It has come to my attention from reading an article from the BBC that the king will be meeting with Pope Leo in the near future.
Yeah, the Pope just blessed an ice cube. He's now the church. He's the Church of, and yeah, I was raised Catholic. My mom was Protestant. My dad was Catholic. I came from one of those households. But no, the Pope just blessed an ice cube, so he's a globalist in the Church of Greta, the new Messiah, the Church of Green, the Gaia inversion, the satanic inversion of Genesis, right? Where we're subservient to a block of ice. So I think that the Pope and King Charles are kind of at the same level. And I don't think they actually aspire after true Christianity right now. And I'm sorry to offend any Catholics. I was raised Catholic, and so I feel like I can say that. I'm gonna go off, stop recording now.